This presentation will take place in English, as I said, and the topic of the presentation is student life. I'm talking about Deree student life and building skills through service learning and humanitarian education. The way in which this presentation will be held is I will first discuss a case study, an educational program that we are running at the American College of Greece, the Meaningful Engagement Program and TRIP. I actually have like 50% of the crowd in this room, are three students at the American College of Greece who participated in the Meaningful Engagement TRIP. So I think this might be, also a very nice plane for interaction. The purpose of this trip is, and the reason why it's a service learning and humanitarian education trip, is that first, you want students to become field workers, volunteers who have a purpose, who are conscious, who are trained and aware. What was the question in my head when I started working and designing this program? It was, okay, we want to be volunteers, but when we are volunteering on the field, what is our motivation? Have we reflected on why we volunteer, how we are to approach the other human being? And this was something that I was missing as a knowledge, and I said, if I'm missing it as a knowledge, I'm sure many of the students are missing it as a knowledge as well. The second purpose is to provide opportunities for real-time interaction. Again, without being selfish, really, I wanted to satisfy my own need for real-time interaction with people that I would see on TV screens. So you see a lot on the news or on your laptop or on YouTube about human tragedy or vulnerable groups within our society, but this was not really satisfying my desire to meet other people, to interact and to understand the circumstances under which they live by myself, with my own eyes. And the third one was to set the grounds for engagement with active citizens, local leadership, and the vulnerable groups and individuals in a given society. It is a very firm belief of mine and of this program and everyone who participates in it that the point is to understand the context within which a vulnerable group or individual or a leader or a strong part of the society is functioning. Because when you just observe the entire context, you can also start reflecting on actual solutions. You're not just visiting the vulnerable group, interacting only with the vulnerable group, and then just going back home. This is not as complete a picture as looking at different aspects of a specific local community. So this was the purpose of the particular trip, and I want to give you the context of where this program belongs. At Deree, the American College of Greece, we have a student affairs office. This is an office that is focusing on building student life programs beyond what we are doing in the classroom. And our student life has different pillars, leadership, for instance, or cross-cultural communication and competence, and this is one of it. Service learning and humanitarian education is one of it. We think that it's of value. Through the participation in clubs, organizations, societies, these are autonomous student groups, and through the participation in programs, the students are developing transferable skills. Skills that they can transfer to their professional lives, to their personal lives when they go outside the campus. Of course, we're developing skills every day. Another way to develop skills is to study abroad or to work, right? So these are very important lessons because they are experiential, the methods are experiential, and once you've learned it, it has become, part of who you are, which is why we're running such programs and why we're setting objectives for those programs. Now, I will just go briefly through 3 inspirational quotes. One is from Nelson Mandela: "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." So this is why we're building such educational programs. A second one by Albert Einstein: I never teach my pupils, I only attempt to provide the conditions in which they can learn. And I think that the conditions for learning are really a lot more than a classroom. They are beyond the walls of the classroom, outside the walls of the classroom, in nature, or in a real-time interaction with other human beings. So this is the plane that we tried to create. And it started with our own curiosity as educators to go out there and experience and learn, and to expand our office to the mountains and the seas and, you know, name it, other places. And the third one was, true teachers are those who use themselves as bridges over which they invite their students to cross. Then, having facilitated their crossing, joyfully collapse, encouraging them to create their own. So the third effort, which is a self-reflection really, is to try and distance ourselves from other members of our team, distance ourselves as educators from the members of our team who are students, and allow them to take the lead, to take the initiative, and in a sense, when we're working in volunteer work, to be equals on the field, so that they can also detach from us. Now, the basic methodology for a service learning humanitarian education trip or program is first critical reflection. That's the rule, actually. Constantly critically reflecting. Are we helping others when we are in a service learning trip? I don't know, at least my response would be no. It's not what you're setting as an objective. You don't know whether you're helping really. I don't know if anyone else would have a spontaneous reaction to it. Are we helping when we're volunteering? Yes, okay. Yes. So others? We're helping ourselves, true. So I'm just saying, it could be yes for some, that I have a strong sense when I'm volunteering that I'm actually helping others. For others, it could be, I realized after this experience that what I really helped was myself. And for others, it could be, I'm not really helping anyone here. I'm interacting, or I'm just getting to know the other person. I cannot really evaluate, assess quantitatively, qualitatively, what my impact was. So I'm just saying this is a great question to pose whenever we are embarking on a volunteering, service learning, trip, journey, activity. Are we volunteering, serving? Definitely. Volunteering is, okay, de facto, when you're volunteering your time, you're volunteering your time. But serving, yes, we are serving, because serving is an attitude. It's not an activity. You're not serving through the activity. It's how you do the activity that makes your activity serving. And then, what is the nature of our impact to us and to others? So, what is the impact? Sometimes we have realized through those trips that our impact was that we were playing with 10 kids and it was just a very joyful afternoon. Is this an impact? It is an impact. How many times has interaction with others which brought joy to you been impactful? So we need to understand what the nature of our impact is to others, and it's important to measure it or to assess it in quantitative or qualitative terms. For instance, we donated 20 books to a library. This library is a bit richer now. And then, of course, interact. Action, action, action. When we act together and we interact, we don't need to speak a lot, and we get to know each other through means other than words. And we have seen that this is a very important aspect of our methodology. Why does context matter? I think I mentioned that. Why in the Greek provinces? Anyone who is an educator will think and realize why sending the students to the Greek provinces outside of Athens was significant. First of all, there are so many beautiful areas outside of Athens, so this was the focus of our curiosity and inquisitiveness. Second, when you pack students on a bus and they go somewhere else to volunteer, you're not distracted by all the different factors that interfere with being present, being there, being with. If you're in Athens, you might have to leave a bit earlier. You might have to go back to your classes, or you might have an English class in the afternoon which you need to get to. So in a sense, the teamwork is disrupted. So I have to admit that the reason why we're going outside of Athens is not that there are not vulnerable groups within Athens or leaders or people we could talk to. It is because in the Greek provinces, we can just be present and we are together throughout the trip. So the experience becomes much more meaningful. It's a pragmatic reason, not a substantive one, really. What is our focus? How do we conduct ourselves? And of course, self and others, but I will get back to that. So these are the types of questions we ask in advance. Okay, now why do we do it? Why do we have to learn how to serve? We need to meet certain objectives, for example, to enrich our skill set, and I will give you some reflections and insights into how I think a service opportunity, a service trip is enriching our skill set. You need to become a servant leader, a social problem solver, to work with diverse groups, to become more creative, to celebrate diversity. And the celebration of diversity doesn't look like a party, it looks like people being together. And while we all learn that integration is something difficult, we realize it's not difficult. It's happening all the time. It's happening easily when people have the right disposition towards it. Now, how do we perform those trips? Let me take you through it. The first thing that we do is we do a site visit and we assess the needs of a particular community. The second step is an intersession where we assign tasks to our group, and a training session where we talk about the entire program, the entire itinerary, and we also bring in experts. For instance, in the last trip to Kalamata, we had an expert on sustainability who talked to us about why water sampling in the Yalova wetlands close to Kalamata in Messenia matters. Why does it matter? Why are we water sampling? Why am I sitting there with my little bottles and I'm putting the water in the bottle and pouring the water in the bottle? So this little act, what is its significance? Why does it matter? Why do people do it? And then we have 3, the actual trip, and of course, a group reflection that takes place throughout the trip too, and individual sessions too, individual debriefing sessions with whoever seeks our feedback. Parenthesis, reflecting is very important. Students are encouraged to bring along a notebook where they note down a few things, a gesture of kindness in their day, the best moment, a challenge they had to overcome, a new person they met, and a good thing about the new person they met. Now, connecting the dots, I also have representatives from this program, this amazing program. This year, the American College of Greece hosted the Education Unites from Camp to Campus program. And through that program, around 100 refugees have studied English and other courses at the American College of Greece. Now, connecting the dots is always important when we're building programs. And in the beginning, precisely because the students were located in our downtown campus, there was little interaction between the student community in the uptown campus in Agia Paraskevi and the student community in the downtown campus. So we thought that this would be an amazing program that would allow the 2 student communities to interact more, which is why not only we opened, but we encouraged the coordinator of the program to encourage students from Education Unites to participate in the Meaningful Engagement program. However, I need to admit that this realization of the great impact of introducing students from the Education Unites program into our program did not come, it was not the first thing I had thought of. It came gradually as we were going through the different trips, the different service learning trips. So let me talk to you a little bit about the journey. Here we are with our Vice President of Public Affairs, Claudia Caridi, my colleague, and a volunteer from Lighthouse Refugee Relief on Lesvos, that's me. And we are on Lesvos and we are learning about the first response to refugees crossing borders through the sea. This is the spring of 2015, and this is also the time during which the EU and Turkey agreement is taking place, which of course creates, everything on the island changes. The NGOs are departing the island, and although we had made all the preliminary site visit in order to actually run our first trip on Lesvos, we realized that it's just not very safe for many reasons to do it. Not safe in terms of physical, we were safe in that sense, I guess, but it was not an environment that we could really monitor, observe, interact with people. People were very stressed during that time, both NGOs, volunteers, and refugees on the island. However, this planted a seed to try to design similar trips elsewhere in Athens. So the next trip was in Trikala, Thessalias. The reason why, now I'm giving out all the secrets. The reason why we chose Trikala in the first place was because of who the people, the political, let's say, leadership, the local political leadership, who the people of Trikala are. Amazing people. I mean, they are an example of how a municipality, an example of how the people involved in a municipality should be running things in a country. So it was not necessarily the vulnerable part that was interesting us. It was the part that is taking action to address the issues that attracted our attention, which is why we started cooperating with them, both the municipality representatives and local educators, teachers, principals in local schools. This was the point of what attracted our attention and our interest in working with them. So when we went to Trikala, we had a series of projects. We interacted at Trikala with local students, and we planted trees in their courtyard together with them, and we played football with them and learned more about what an agricultural society is facing in terms of daily challenges. And then we also interacted with refugees who were hosted at that time at the hotspot outside the city of Trikala. So during the first trip that we ever ran in the fall of 2016, we interacted with refugee families in the hotspot site that was then run by the UNHCR and the Greek army outside the city of Trikala. In the next one, we went to Samos, and on Samos, we cooperated with the local guides association, like the Scouts, Οδηγούς. We participated in experiential, let's say, games with them to understand better the experiences of locals on the island of Samos, of refugees hosted on the island of Samos. And then we also visited the shelter, Metavrasi shelter, the NGO Metavrasi shelter, that was hosting around 17 unaccompanied minors. And the interaction included sports and games and, hikes, but also, very interestingly, we volunteered our time and energy and talent to draw a very big kalos ήρθατε welcome here at the island, at the village, at the entrance of the village Mytilini, together. This was the first time that, and I think this was the most impressive experience ever for me, that we were not interacting out of context with a group that was the beneficiary, let's say, of whatever action we had planned. We were working together, and it was a moment where I think I personally experienced dignity and cooperation and empowerment of both sides. And I realized how impactful service learning and humanitarian education programs can be when you're working with. It also is very, very important for the beneficiary, because the beneficiary is a bearer of responsibility, is an agent. And when you're just going there with your, balls and games and activities, and you're presuming that this person is even interested in that, there's a very big likelihood that you're wrong. Instead, if you say, there is a project out there, this village needs to reshape its, to beautify the entry point to the village, and they want a big kalos ήρθατε, so now it's not about me, it's not about the beneficiary of my actions as a volunteer, it's not about the beneficiary of our actions, it's about this third point outside these two parties, and now we are serving the community, and we are engaging with each other through service. So this was the idea behind it. And then, of course, this is actually a very significant moment. Really, this village on Samos had never seen, people who were different. really, to that extent, right? And in addition to that, as you know, I mean, it's not something that we should hide. There was strife in many of those communities because of the presence of refugees on the island. And here you see everyone is dancing together during a lunch that was held in the middle of the square on this village. And I think that it was a very significant moment. And I'm also hoping that it might have changed a bit perceptions. And this is why I also feel very happy and proud to be serving the American College of Greece, because it became a channel for something like this to be possible. Then through the Education Unites program, this happened. We went to Kalamata, and now we don't have a situation where we are at the hotspot, thank God. We don't have a situation where we are cooperating with refugees in a shelter. We don't have a situation where we're meeting refugees who are now in the housing program of Trikala. This is our third trip. Now we're in Kalamata, and we have Education Unites students who are persons on the move with us on the trip, volunteers helping, serving the local community. I don't know if you are realizing, as I am, and I'm humbled by the leap. I think the leap shows also what is possible if we create the conditions. What is possible? Integration is not a struggle. Endless conferences, endless discussions on integration. If the conditions, which don't require much, the Education Unites program is an educational program. It provided education, a plane for interaction, but on the correct terms. The Meaningful Engagement program provided a plane for interaction, not just between students, but with the local community. And this is what happened. Now, what did we do? Because I've talked a lot about the importance of service learning trips, I've said very few about what we do there. So when we went to Kalamata, we had a guided tour of Kalamata. It's important first to understand where you are, what the history is, and what the city stands for, and how the locals are perceiving of their city. Then we went to the Children's Villages SOS, and we engaged in different activities. Why? Because the needs of the different populations served by the SOS villages are different. So you had small children who did handcrafting and cooking workshops. You had teenagers who did a workshop on leadership with some of our students. And then you had their parents who are coming again from vulnerable homes, and the parents did a career workshop, a professional development workshop with our counselors and with students. So this was a meaningful experience for all, and it was directed to the needs of each one of the groups represented served by the Children's Villages SOS Center. Then, at least one of the most impactful experiences in my life, I have to say so far, the visit to Kethea Kitaron, for which we had to be trained first. What did we do there? We did not say that we're going to serve or learn about drug addiction and former drug addicts. We just said, for one day, thank you for hosting us in your home. We're going to just help you out with whatever chores, work you do in your Kethea center. So they opened their doors, we went in, there were rules about how we should conduct ourselves, what we need to do and what we need to leave behind in order to be members of that community for a day, which we had to respect, so there was a framework. And then we were invited in their home, we broke up into teams and we worked with them. We cleaned the bathrooms, we cooked food, we engaged in farming activities. We also ran a project with them, together with them, in order to support the Yalova wetlands. So we carved signs in order to place them to the different plants, yes, in the Yalova, protected, yes, exactly, the Yalova wetlands. We met with Giorgos Lazaridis. Giorgos Lazaridis is an athlete. He is a person with disabilities and a Paralympic athlete in tennis. And he talked to us about the Aphorozo and the Ancient Messini Open, so projects he's running. This was also very inspirational. We visited the Yalova wetlands and we intervened in different ways. We cleaned a path and we observed birds and understood why observing and recording, documenting birds and bird watching is important. Why does it matter? Why do we do it? What does it preserve? And then we visited the hydro farm, an agriculture entrepreneurial project in Kalamata, and learned about their work there and what is innovative about their work. Not all of us agreed with the methods, but still it was a very interesting aspect of, again, the dynamic, the strong part of this community. Now, why does service learning matter, and to whom? This was also the leading question in the description of this presentation. Otherness and human dignity is about guaranteeing something missing. What do I mean by that? In whatever circles, we find ourselves, in a local, let's say this black circle is the local community. It's filled with color, right? It's filled. So if something is filled, is there space for anything else in it? No. It's important to make sure that in any given community circle, the law, politics, the rights, the practice of rights, right? The right to freedom of speech, the right to vote, right? The right to vote was actually just like that. There was a little space here that was waiting to be filled by women. Okay? So, in a sense, practicing human dignity through such programs and humanitarian education is first of all about realizing how much you don't know about the other person. If you realize how much you don't know about who the other person is, how much you don't know, how separated you are from the other person, this is the first step to understanding that if you want to really preserve the right of every human being to their human dignity, you need to ensure that each space, each given space, educational programs, colleges, universities, nations, that they preserve a little space always for someone new, someone who's not defined yet, someone who has not been identified, someone whose identity has not been respected or protected yet or acknowledged, to come and fill that space. And this should be infinitely, always left open. So the big learning that we get out of service learning and humanitarian education programs is that we realize the otherness of other human beings and how, without questioning, criticizing, wanting to learn, we might never know, we make sure that we leave space open for that otherness as well. Insights into the nature of virtues and skills built through service learning and humanitarian education. We talk a lot about skills in education, and we say leadership. I mean, I personally am a little bit sick of leadership. I think it's very important, but I think that it has become such a catchphrase that you really need to reflect on what do you mean by leadership. So leadership is very, very important, but there are other skills that we are developing through service learning. One becomes aware, very important, and relevant. Relevance is something that you cannot get by reading books. You have to live with other people to become relevant. You can be relevant, for instance, if you think that if you're very high paid, if you're very wealthy, and you think that it's very easy for people to live by XYZ salary or income. So in many senses, we are irrelevant. It's important to accept it, and I think it's one of the objectives of education, if education wants to produce responsible citizens, to expose them to other environments and other people's experiences in order for them to become relevant. One of the experiences we gained through this trip was how we treat food. 2 generations ago, or maybe 1 generation ago in Greece, we would treat food differently than we do today. At least this is my experience. For instance, when we sat around the table, we would see, I'm sorry guys to say this, as it's my personal subjective opinion. I would see that American students, because we also hosted US students, naturally, we're an American college, American students and students coming from the Education Unites program who had the experience of being refugees, some of them, I'm not saying all, were respecting generally food more. They were questioning, why are we leaving food on the table? This is a very important central question. We're not learning through interacting only with former drug addicts, we're learning by observing different attitudes. US students are always taking a doggy bag. They're never leaving food behind. We're not wasting food, right? We can make many assumptions about why this is so. There are cultural reasons, and there are also perhaps reasons of upbringing. I mean, I don't want to stereotype now. I'm saying that these experiences are important, this interaction, and I think it allows us to critically reflect on where we're standing as well. Detachment. It's very important to detach yourself from the person you're serving, from the person you're interacting with. As an educator, to detach yourself from students, it's not about me. It's not about me making the statements. It's about them learning on their own. So detachment is a very important skill. Why is detachment important? How many people in their jobs, in the job market, take everything personally, right? What an important trait to have gained. Persistence, adaptability, very important. Resilience, cross-cultural competence, putting others or the team first. When I'm tired or bored, I just, persevere. Humbleness, communication, and patience. And I want to say that communication and patience go hand by hand. Another thing we realized with our US students and students speaking other languages in generally, other than Greek, was that in these trips to the Greek provinces, many of the members of our group had to be extremely patient when people were talking Greek, were speaking Greek. So an important element of integration is definitely building language skills, either English or Greek or other languages. So it sounds self-evident, and we have language programs, but when you're actually there and you're experiencing how patient some people are, you realize, in your gut, the significance of these type of skills, language skills. A few pictures from our trip. So here we are in the center of Kalamata. This is the tour I talked about. Here we're having souvlaki. Here we have packed all the good things that we brought to the Children's Villages SOS, and we're trying to deliver them. Here we're at the Children's SOS Villages, and the entire team. Here is Yorgos Lazaridis. You can see Yorgos Lazaridis, who spoke to us about, his experiences. And then another interesting experience, we strolled around the city together with Yorgos Lazaridis, and we experienced firsthand what it means for a city to have accessible points or not to have accessible points. So the absurdity of what accessibility in a city really means, and how much improvement needs to be done. Here we're eating together. Here we're dancing together after eating, bird watching. Here we have our community lunch, which evolved into a random, spontaneous dancing session with our wellness coach who was on board. These are the beautiful signs we carved for the different plants protected in the Yalova area. Here we have students who helped. So we donated books to the Navarino Environmental Observatory Library. This is a research center at the Navarino, Costa Navarino. Here we cooked with our wellness coach, and this is my other colleague Maria and Angela. So we cooked a community dinner in the evening. That's it. And this is our community. And this is the hydro farm project. And this is meditation. So another thing that we did, which I think is important for anyone who's an educator, we integrated other services that our college is offering, such as wellness services, into our trip. Because we feel that, the volunteers also need to be taken care of, and we should be taking care of each other within the team. So this was, I think, also very beneficial. That's it.